KCTV5 political analyst Pete Mundo and Sly James are back now to break down this big race.
All right, so Pete, we heard from you in that report we just saw. It seems like the late momentum is with Barbara Bollier, at least in terms of money. What's Roger Marshall have to do to overcome that, and do you think he'll be successful?
Yeah, I do believe he'll be successful, Brad. And what he has to do to overcome that is simply stand for conservative principles that have won the state, the Senate, for going on 100 years. The money's pouring in for Barbara Bollier, as you mentioned there, $13 million. But it's basically money coming from California. That's the state that's donated the most amount of money to Bollier's campaign in the third quarter, almost $2 million coming out of California. And that's Californians saying, hey, let's see if we can buy a Senate seat in Kansas. Everything's pretty safe here. Our money goes a lot further in Kansas and across the Kansas City market, the Wichita market as well. And that's the play. And Bollier is trying to convince these people to give her more money by saying this race is close. I don't believe it's nearly as close as the Bollier campaign wants to try to convince people that it is, but it helps keep them in the race.
Sly, do you think that we will know the winner of this race Tuesday night?
I think it's possible that you'll have at least enough in there so that the trends will be fairly obvious. Now, if it's really, really close, that might drag into Wednesday, but I think by Wednesday night you'll have a pretty good idea of what it is. And I do think it's refreshing. And maybe it is Californians, I don't know. To me, that's relatively irrelevant. But I do think it's refreshing to actually hear somebody actually talk about the idea of being able to work across party lines and being able to have Democrats and Republicans seem to say that that's something that she's done in the past. I'd like to see more of that and less of the mudslinging nonsense that happens in these types of campaigns so often. Once again, what are we looking for in government? The nastiest person or people who are actually going to try to be collaborative?
Her ads are very similar to the Laura Kelly ads that we saw a couple of years ago when Kelly was running for governor in Kansas, where, you know, Bollier is with Republicans who were endorsing her.
Well, I would add to that and just say that as much as she's trying to define herself as that independent, she has to do that because she's a Democrat in the state of Kansas. We saw Sharice Davids run on that, Governor Kelly run on that. But the reality is she's voted with the Democrats in Topeka 90% of the time. So her record tells a different story from what she's trying to portray to us with $13 million worth of TV ads.
Well, I would guess that if you really look at both candidates, their records are going to tell you a little bit something what they're trying to buy on television. That seems to be the nature of the beast these days. Nonetheless, one thing I do know, attitude changes actions. And I don't hear any changed attitude out of the Marshall camp. I at least hear that out of the Bollier camp. Now, whether they both turn out to be charlatans, I can't tell you, but at least I'd rather bet on somebody who's at least saying that they want to do something positive and constructive and work with all people to get something done, rather than the ones promoting the same old party ideology in line.
But give Roger Marshall this. He's running as a conservative. He's not trying to hide who he is. He's saying this is what I stand in, this is what I believe in. Now, you may not agree with it, that's fine, but he's not trying to cover up who he is. She's doing that every day.
Well, I think that's probably your take on it, and that's very good radio. And keep that going, buddy, because otherwise it's going to be awfully boring that early in the morning.
Well, I gave you the numbers. 90% vote with the Democrats. I mean, that's not a made-up radio cliche. That's a fact.
Well, whether it is or it isn't, all I can say is then those Republicans who are showing up saying they're Republicans and they support her because of what they see must be out of their minds. Because at the end of the day, they are Republicans and they are supporting her. And why aren't they supporting the other guy? This is supposed to be some sort of a monolithic block of Republican largesse and attitude moving forward. At least there's some Republicans out there to support her. I don't see any Democrats supporting Roger Marshall.
But you know, Sly, I mean, you've been around forever. And you've seen where when a Democrat runs in Kansas, they run on the idea, they find a couple of Republicans, they dig them out of the woodwork, and they say, hey, you're going to vote for me, right? And then they try to convince them that the entire Republican Party should consider voting for that Democrat. And we've seen this tried again.
Oh, Pete, you cynical analyst. All I can tell you is that I still would rather hear somebody at least talking about trying to work across party lines than watching somebody who I know is not going to. What we need in this government, what we need in this country is balance. And if we continue to argue that it's my side or no side, we're all going to run into a big problem.
I will add that and just say, if Bollier, Brad and Ellen, does keep this tight, it's a disaster for Republicans in the Senate all over the country as well.
Yeah, and that's, of course, something we're going to be watching, the balance of power. And there's so many states including Kansas, that it's going to be talked about on Tuesday night as far as the balance of power in the Senate. All right, thanks guys so much.